This is Shawn Crystal. Catch the Inkpulp podcast on Pharcyde TV Wednesdays at noon Pacific Time, 3 o'clock Eastern Time. Come hang. Peace. This is the Inkpulp podcast. It looks like it. Everything looks so good.
Mm-hmm. Everything is primo quality. At least from my end. How about yours?
Yeah, I mean, you sound great.
We'll see if this internet jumps around again.
I think I would have seen it by now. Usually by now I've seen something. Seems good. Did you do something different?
No. I'm just making sure, because that's typically the thing, the buzzsaw that we run into anytime that we record one of these, is that sometimes my internet lags. Now, I think it's internet specific, so let's say you start recording from your end, depending on your setup, depending on your connection. It might be less than what we typically encounter, if we encounter anything at all. But let's not ruin the luck that we have so far.
Let's not test the fates.
Exactly. What's news, man? How are you?
Just getting back from a long trip. As you know,
we saw each other all of 4 days ago, 3 days ago. What is it now? It's Thursday, so last time I saw you, you were still cuddled up to a pillow at 3 a.m. in the morning as I exited. I left some money on the end table for you. And
for
I went to the airport. I'm kidding. I was making
I didn't even pick up on the joke.
Making an escort.
I'm still catching up. I just got back yesterday, so I'm still a little foggy.
How was everything after there was no, we went out to give people some what do you call it, context. We went to Orlando for MegaCon. In which I thought was pretty phenomenal by way of turnout, pretty sort of like, it reminded me of the olden days. Yeah. I thought that by way of, what do you call it, attendance, there wasn't really anything in there that made me go, oh, look, people are being extra careful, or like, you know, this has really impacted that business, the business being convention. You know, the people who set up the convention and everything. I thought, again, by way of attendance, it was great. It was pretty cool.
Felt like old days.
It did. Now, in as far as the buying portion of it, right, like the people who actually bought stuff, I don't know for everybody else, but I've heard from, so this is an anecdote, but I've heard from a bunch of different people, you know, they were getting a lot of traffic, but they weren't getting a lot of sales. Did you hear anything different?
No, I mean, that was my experience, and I think it was most people's experience, unless, like, it felt like the type of show where if there were a couple of collectors there, like whales, as we call them. Sure. And if they came by your table, like Tommy had a really nice day because one came by and got 3 Star Wars covers in one swoop. Sure. Outside of that, I don't think Tommy sold much, but that sale made the con spectacular. So I think for a few people, it was great. And for everyone else, like, it wasn't terrible, but it was slow.
Yeah, it was slow. I mean, I don't know of too many people, again, short of the few exceptions that we can probably count on 2 hands. I think I saw, like, you know, our good buddy Kreese was always busy, because I think a lot of his original pieces are incredibly approachable. By the way, if you're not already supporting Kreese in some capacity, go do that now. Right? I'd put up his social media, but I don't care enough to remember it. But this kid is really, really good.
Yeah, Kreese is awesome.
And there's standouts like, you know, Stanley, who's goes by the name of Art Germ. Everybody knows his work. So there was always a good amount of people around his table willing to buy those exclusive covers. But I think the business has changed a little bit in as far as what people are looking for. I don't think they're looking for as much as original art, more than they are looking for sort of a level of exclusivity that they wouldn't get anywhere else. Right?
Yeah. I'd agree with that. I don't know if I'd agree with that, saying the business has changed or the conventions are becoming different experiences. I feel like what you're saying might apply to the Read and Fan Expo shows.
Sure.
But the
That might be true.
smaller shows I've done, I've sold a decent amount of artwork.
Okay.
So those felt more like the shows that are more Comic-Cons,
Mm-hmm.
I think are still good selling artwork shows.
Okay.
But it's a guess. I mean, I'm just guessing. But it feels like the bigger shows, there's so much to see and potentially buy.
Yeah.
People are looking for low-cost exclusive items like variant covers that are signed, stuff like that.
Right. And there's a weird strategy that I had seen on one of the busier days. It was either Saturday or Friday, in which when they let people into the show, it was pretty evident that the strategy from an audience / attendee side was to go as far back into the convention floor as possible and work their way out from there. You know what I mean? It's not like us where we walk in and we just like start from the left and start zigzagging up and down the aisles. They'll finally we're done on the farthest one on the right. They started more from the back and just worked their way up to the front.
Do you think they started more that way because that's where the celebrities were autographing shit and that's what most people are there for?
I mean, I would bet good money. I wouldn't be surprised if that were the case, and I'd bet good money towards that. So... Yeah, it is to say that it was, like I said, it didn't miss a beat. I don't know if it was significantly, profoundly different. I think that's one of the things that I saw where I was like, oh, well, a lot of these booths, especially in the Artist Alley, I'm just talking about the Artist Alley side, like a lot of these Artist Alleys, when it comes to well-known names, not necessarily the ones who are still working on their way up, which, by the way, God bless them, because I think they populate all of, 80%, 70% of Artist Alley. I'm really glad to see an infusion of different people putting out their work and taking a chance on themselves and seeing like who's out there for them. That's really, really super cool. But in as far as like known names, basically made quote unquote made guys, I think these exclusivity packages, these exclusivity opportunities do a lot better for them at these kinds of shows than original art does,
Yeah, that makes sense.
Which is great. Now, I was exhausted by the time the first day was done. I had arrived there from LA because I had a little bit of work beforehand, so I flew to LA, stayed there for a few days, then flew out, landed in Orlando, in which it was the first day, and it started something like 3 p.m., 4 p.m. or something.
Yeah.
And then continued into the 9 p.m. hour, and you know me, I don't have much staying power by way of conventions to begin with, and to think that we were going to start on a Thursday at 5 p.m. and then go into 9. And I don't know if we stayed there that entire time that first day.
No,
that was a weird start for me. And then we went right into Friday, which was the first full day, and I thought like, oh, I'm not going to have enough tenacity and endurance to be able to stay to get this out.
It was a tough show. One of the issues I had was the opening at 9:30. That's new, and that to go till 9 o'clock at night one night and then open up at 9:30 the next morning, and every day thereafter, including Sunday, was crazy.
That was a little different, yeah, for sure. I don't know how they can. I don't know what sort of decision making went behind that, but that was a little weird to see that on the back of our badges, to see those hours, to be like, whoa, 9:30 in the morning.
Yeah, I mean, Sunday's usually like an 11 a.m. open, and typically Fridays and Saturdays are at 10 a.m. open.
Yeah, here's hoping that they have good business reasons for it, or maybe they were just saying that maybe it's like one of those, like, let's see how this goes and let's test it out for a year and see if we can calibrate accordingly. But like you said, it took me a little while to get used to, or at least it surprised me when I first saw it.
It was a lot.
Yeah.
By Sunday, I was just dead.
Yeah. And anyway, it was on that second day. On what, like probably by lunchtime, in which I was realizing, I don't think I'm having as much. Now, mind you, we had talked about this, like the last time that we had one of these things, the last time that you and I were on Inkpulp doing these podcasts, and I wasn't really convinced that going back to shows was the thing to do for me, right? And I don't diminish or begrudge anybody who wants to go back to a convention life. Clearly, everybody has their business and they understand how, they have an intimate understanding of how to optimize for their business. But as far as for me, I think it was in that second day, midday Friday, where I was like, I don't think I want to do any more of this.
Yeah, I was jealous of that in a way. It sounds great. I mean, for my business, and I don't have the numbers to back this up, and I won't know that for a little while. It feels like these are great places to promote Inkpulp instruction.
Sure. Sure. And like I said, this is the similar to the conversation that we had that day when I was like telling you, I was like, I think Shawn, I don't think I'm going to do these anymore.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, that's so awesome. And for me, I feel like I still need a little bit more data to understand. Is what you were saying. You need a little bit more data to understand if this helps sort of, if you're in an awareness campaign for your instruction schools, which is what? It's at inkpulpaudio.com. Is that where?
No, inkpulpinstruction.com.
Inkpulp instruction. All right. So so to get awareness out for that, I think you're going to need, a larger sort of data set to understand
absolutely
how impactful it is, and that's really super smart. Before we forgot, you actually had a panel that had a handful of the guys from Essential Sequential on it. It was Tommy,
Dan. Tommy, Dan, and me.
Right, and you guys talked about what was the subject matter there?
The subject matter is turning your art into a career. So it covers your going from I like drawing to I'm a professional. What road did everyone take? What path? How did you develop your skill? How did you get a first job? Stuff like that. It's kind of an intro to the idea of what Inkpulp instruction can do for you. And in that sense, I mean, the panel was well attended. And I gave away a ton of free little thumb drives with sample chapters on it and links. I feel like that sort of stuff is essential to the building I'm doing right now because people get to know the face behind what I'm doing. And I think those are really good.
Yeah, I think as a strategy, it's always... because you don't have a $1,000,000,000 budget, it's almost you optimize for the tools that's available for you, which is making it not necessarily homegrown, but making it a bit more personal, and face-to-face time is critical to that. They understand you as an individual and as a professional, the things that you offer by way of your services. You can talk about it more directly, and maybe it'll scale up later on. But for the time being, I think that's a really smart strategy.
Right. Agreed.
So anyway, so after, we were there for a bit, I took a look around and I said, there's really nothing here that I can't do on my own, in the comfort of my home. It doesn't take me away from my 9-to-5 responsibilities, and it doesn't take me away from, in stretches of time away from my family. And I really felt like, I still do, I feel like there are times when I can do double duty when I'm working on multiple things in the comfort of my own office in my studio, right? Which is, I can work on my pages and do 9-to-5 work, and you know what I mean? Like I can be productive in multiple fronts. Whereas in a convention, because I'm there, because people are kind enough to visit us and engage and ask for signatures or ask for commissions or just talk about like, hey, I read your book from X amount of years ago. It behooves me to be sort of alert and present, as opposed to just like nodding my head and saying thank you very much and not engaging in that space, right? Just purely out of gratefulness and as a giant thank you to those people who have supported us.
Absolutely.
Whereas it would be a little bit more accommodating if I stayed at home, and really I started looking at the time spent away from home, away from work, and in the finances of like being at that show, understanding how much everything costs, not just the flight, not just the hotel, but everything else that's compounded into that, right?
Sure.
Food and experience and all that. And I'd realize like, I don't think this is going to be, at least now I've deprioritized the value of that and put more into like getting actual work and product out.
What about the seeing your friends portion of it? Because that's still something I really look forward to and get a lot out of.
Yeah. Well, it is to say that I don't like you guys that much. You know, like I like you plenty, but I don't like you enough to get on a 5-hour plane ride and go somewhere. No, actually I was reflecting on that on the plane ride home. I'm like, of all the things that I'd probably end up missing, it's these opportunities that I think I put near the top of the list, which is being able to catch up with everybody and just having like a great dinner and, you know, seeing where everybody's head is at, or in our case, when we went out to dinner, you guys were so fucking high that I think I was the one that was doing all the talking, and you guys were all just kind of like nodding.
Oh, come on, I wasn't that bad.
To egg me. No, you were gone. You were.
I was not gone.
You were gone. It's all you can do to stay upright. Sitting up on both butt cheeks, you know what I mean? But you were freaking gone. Between you and Decal, Jeff was just like looking at my mouth, I think. If he wasn't looking at my mouth, he was looking through my mouth.
So we ruined the friend experience by being too high. Is that what you're saying?
I think so. I think Jeff was literally seeing like the Sesame Street version of words coming out of my mouth as I was seeing them. And he was rearranging them in midair as I was talking. And then as he I think I was 10 sentences deep before he even formed an opinion on the first sentence that I was saying. And so by that time, he always felt like he was on a weird sort of like 3-hour delay in the conversation.
I'll admit to being lost in looking at the waitresses there, but I was not that high.
Well, you were lost. And I think I look at that situation and I go like, oh, this is nice. You know, I don't get a chance to hang out with these guys, but they're totally.
So we disappointed you? Is that what happened?
They're not even in the same room as me right now.
Oh, we disappointed you.
I'm giving you guys a hard time. But my point is, if there is an opportunity, I mean, again, that's the thing that I would clearly have to sacrifice, is to just like, hey, I can't be at the same shows with these guys and have the opportunity to hang out and catch up and just, just be pals and miss out on that camaraderie. Mm-hmm. But I think if that was really super critical for us to get caught up, one, I could just go to a show for like a day and a half. It's a bit more local that everybody's going to be at, So everything on the West Coast is wide open for those kinds of conversations. Or we could make an effort to just like, find a way to retreat for a day or two or three and just
I think exclusively. I think that's a really great thing to do. And I know I keep talking about it. But I definitely should act on that.
Yeah, without the stresses and sort of the pressures of being at a show and like, maintaining sort of like, okay, we can do this for a half hour, but I got to get back for X, Y, for whatever reason, I got to get back to the business of being at a comic book.
Do you think it would be worthwhile to do like our own like retreat with a portion of it being like a show where we could live stream and sell artwork and if you want to make it businessy, yeah, sure. Right, which that's what I'm asking. Would that be, or you think it's better to just keep it like social and not involve?
I don't know. Again, both of those things, as long as the right expectations are in place, right, are pretty cool. If we are going down the spirit of what I'm talking about. If I'm going to go and hang out with you guys at a cabin somewhere, like in a retreat somewhere, and I'm just going to end up drawing, I might as well just end up going to a convention, because it's like, it's all the same at that point, short of minus the crowd, which never really bothers me, short of
it doesn't bother
maybe walking to and from the show, because you got to go shoulder to shoulder with everybody trying to get to our tables.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
That's my 2 cents on it. I'm not saying that it's broken, it's just setting up the right expectation for it, right?
I understand.
So what? So yeah, after I'd kind of had that conversation with you, it kind of took off this pressure. Now, mind you, I'm still going to fulfill all the commitments that I've had for different shows throughout this year, the remainder of 2022, because I've already sort of like signed on. They've already kind of put me on their
which ones are that?
Website or social
Memphis?
Media. Memphis for sure. And I think I said. There's got to be 2 more, but one is for a show called Bell County Comic Con that is being organized and stood up by the same people who do Iconic Comics. They put on their own show, which is great by way of awareness, because a lot of the media that's in that show is Iconic Comics centric, not the least of which the artwork, not the least of which the badges, not the least of which the promotional material. All our stuff is going to be on there. So it's a great way to sort of meet Iconic Comics, relatively like Iconic Comics fans, right?
Right.
and then that who are going to be in that show. And apparently that show does quote unquote great. And I never really dug into what great means. Like, is it money, which I hope is not the case. I mean, obviously money would be great, but I'm looking at it for more like the engagement of people who are there
Right.
interested in our products,
Right.
interested in our projects and our books. That would be great. That would, to me, would be the big
Where
one.
is that show? When is that show?
I would say it's got to be in Texas somewhere, right? Bell County. Yeah, and it's in. I just saw it. I'll look it up.
Okay.
And I'll text you offline.
How many books does Iconic have right now?
Oh, I mean, there are as many as four different titles going on at the same
That's what I
time.
thought. Okay.
Two of which are being done by Tim Lim and Mark Pellegrini. A book called Common America, which is supremely popular. The feedback, the fan base, the fervor that they get for an independent publishing, and for two guys who don't even do it full time. It's phenomenal, the kind of feedback that they get, the support that they get, the fan base that they've built for themselves because they're so damn consistent.
Yeah, that's like a cottage industry they built. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, dude, it's freaking amazing. And not only is it well received, but it's also very successful as a business venture, right? Their trend line has been like going upwards and to the right for easily a year and a half to 2 years now. There's another book called written by this guy named Doug Ernst. Doug is a really good friend of mine who I often call offline and just catch up just to see what he's doing. His book is called Soul Finder, Catholic priest dealing with the occult. Really sort of personal to him. He finds different artists and different co-creators to work with. The first one was done by Tim, second one, and I think the third one is being done by other artists, which is great. They're about to combine those two titles into Common America X Soul Finder, which is a great cross-promoting kind of book that they now what it suggests is that they coexist in the same sort of universe, And what I really love about it, ultimately, if I take a step back, is just the work ethic and the individuals that I'm involved with. They're all aimed towards the relatively exact same trajectory in the horizon, which is let's build our audience. Let's not worry about the mainstream. Let's just keep our head down and keep producing our books, which is, to me, I want that. I'm optimizing for that game plan where I'm just like, I'm not going to worry about what's out there right now. Yeah, it can get disappointing. End of the day, what they eat doesn't make me shit. So I'm just going to focus on my books, focus on the guys who are doing effectively the same thing that I am, which is, you are also somewhat related to that, which is like choosing your own stuff, right? And focusing on that as opposed to like bitching and moaning of what's out there right now.
Yeah.
So that I appreciate. And these guys they have that in spades. So I love being in their company whenever we're chit-chatting, So yeah, I think those are the shows, and maybe because it's within a train ride's distance, when you guys go to, by you guys I mean you and Maddie, Matteo Scalera, and I don't know who else is going up to Emerald City Comic Con. I might take that train ride up there and just be like, hey, I'm gonna hang out for a day, pass out on the couch, whoever will have me, and then take the train ride back the next day.
We definitely have room. I mean, I got a room for me, you, and Matteo, so you're welcome to. Now, I do have to talk to you about the coming to Portland outside of the show. Sure. Matteo's not going to be able to do that. He just told me yesterday.
It's too, what do you call it? He doesn't have enough room at the front end, right?
He just doesn't have room front or back end. It's just too much time away from work,
from family.
And family.
Yeah, makes total sense. I never liked him a lot anyway. You know what I mean? I think just by way of odor and what he brings to the group.
So Jason and I are...
We'll plan.
Jason and I are still talking about coming. What I'm waiting to hear on from Jason is it better for him to come before Seattle or before Rose City?
Oh, sure.
Because Rose City will be in Portland anyway. So, but it all depends on... What?
I didn't know that you were doing both.
I am doing both. Okay. I'm doing every show I can this year for Inkpulp Instruction.
Makes sense.
To promote. I have a panel at, so far, almost every show I'm committed to, and the ones I don't have a panel committed to yet, I'm just in the process of applying.
Okay.
But it's looking good.
That's great, man. All of that is encouraging. All of that is in the positive for me.
Yeah, me too. So Jason is going to let me know, and then I'll talk to you about it all.
Sounds good. Either way is cool by me.
But yeah, as long as I get to hang with you, if you're not doing cons, that's no sweat. I just, yeah, it'll be good to see. I enjoy
Yeah, Cat.
the time we have, and
I
that was like my
You
highlight.
make it sound like I only have so much time on Earth left. You know, like I enjoy the time.
No, it's not that. It's that I mean, I'm a social creature, and I
Yeah,
don't live a social life at home.
sure,
And
sure.
my friends are very important to me, and to spend time with them is really enriching for me. So
Yeah,
I like to see you all.
yeah,
So
yeah.
whether or not it be at a con doesn't matter.
Sure, sure. Me,
I'll
not
make
so
it
much,
happen.
but I'll humor you because
You're
I'll
more
need that.
tolerating of
I
me.
don't. Yeah, actually, I'm more tolerating of like a lot of different people. The most engaging conversation that I had this weekend, not you, so don't be insulted.
I
Um,
was just about to get insulted.
yeah, don't get insulted until I tell you to not. You know, you were about to get insulted until I told you not to get
Yeah,
insulted. In which case, you're like,
you
oh,
saw
okay,
it coming. You know me.
yeah. Was with Tommy.
Yeah.
So I almost want to call him always by accident, never on purpose, Tommy Lee Jones, but it's Tommy Lee Edwards, and he's a phenomenal illustrator, artist, craftsman, and now because he's such a nerd for it, I'm finding out his passion and love for being sort of like, you know, reviving cars,
Oh
reviving,
yeah, yeah.
right, like. Anyway, so but this weekend he was working on one of these pieces, and I don't know if he was supposed to deliver it to the person who commissioned it to him by the end of the show, but he was working on a Magnum PI piece.
Yeah, that he wasn't. He was trying to. I don't know if he was
Right.
supposed to. I'm sure the person getting it was expecting it, but
Yeah. Yeah.
Tommy
And
didn't
so
finish it.
and sitting there talking with Tommy, it was weird because I just started off kind of like hovering over his shoulder because similar to, I don't know, like it's weird how if a person were to do that to me, if I'm sitting there rendering something, or if a fan or a customer or one of you guys like hover over my shoulder, oftentimes I think it is out of courtesy that somebody says like, hey, I hope you don't mind me watching. I hope you don't mind me, like, oh, I hope I'm not interrupting. I hope I'm not, you know what I mean? Like, whatever, I'm taking you out of whatever you're
Sure,
doing.
sure.
And rare does that ever happen. Like, it's few and far between, and somebody has to be a real chatterbox for me to be like, oh, geez, man, this is not leading to me trying to finish this thing and be able to contribute to this conversation at the same time, right? This needs more attention one way or the other. So I sort of like, but whenever somebody says that, I always go like, no problem. It's
Right.
absolutely fine. Whatever you want to talk about. You want to ask me questions. You want to chit chat. So, but weirdly enough, I did that same exact thing with Tommy. And when he was rendering this piece, like, I don't know how big that thing was. It might have been like 2 feet by 3 feet. It was pretty
It
big.
was like 15 by 20 at
It was
least.
huge, right?
Yeah.
And so as he's sitting there rendering what I thought was one of the most critical parts of the phase, which is Tom Selleck's like mug as I almost said TJ Hooker, but it's
Magnum
PI.
PI, yeah.
So he's rendering it based on reference. I was looking at the reference that he was using, and I think he had already kind of set up the reference to have the right sort of light source that he wanted.
Right.
And I was looking at how he was rendering it and his sort of like translation of whatever reference that he was looking for. I was just like fascinated. I was like,
he's
I
fascinating
was
to watch.
riveted, you know.
Yeah.
Like I was watching him do like, oh, I wonder why he put that shadow there. That didn't exist in the reference, you know.
Right.
So I was just like, it took all of my concentration to not just be like, why did you do that, Tommy? Blah, 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 blah. You know, like, so I just like be a sort of like this fly on the wall, you know, this voyeuristic sort of pair of eyeballs. I just wanted to see this guy paint. Thankfully, he turned to me and did the same thing that I would do to a bunch of different people, which is to say like, hey, you know, you want to, like, I don't know, he opened it up to a conversation. You know, he didn't
Right.
necessarily say, ask me anything that you want, but
Right.
you know, he just started talking to me, you know, how you doing,
Yeah.
kind of a thing. And I was very opportunistic. I was like, what the hell's up with that shadow, Johnny? I mean, you know, Tommy, that wasn't in the thing. And he walked me through his sort of thinking behind it.
Yeah.
Because it was so, like, the shadow was so harsh. I thought he made a mistake, you know, like, that's weird, you know. And he walked me through it, right? And so he was like, this is the process. I'm at this level of the process right now. I'm at this sort of like, I'm at stage 2. I'm at stage 3. Now he didn't say stage, but he was like, he's at
Right.
this sort of like, he's at the wash version of the process,
Right.
you know? And I was like, geez, Louise, I figured, you know, I would be pretty happy with where he was before he started adding the ink wash. And by the way, this was already the ink wash wasn't the base, right?
No,
Which is what I'd seen previous from a lot of different people, which is pretty typical. The ink wash was like right on top of the stuff that he had already painted. He was adding an extra layer of like shadow and dimension to it.
Yeah,
you know.
I started doing that after having that same conversation with him.
Yeah. So here he was painting away, and you invite me to you make it inviting for me to ask questions. I'm going to ask a gazillion more, especially if I have this great opportunity of being able to stand over your shoulder and ask you in real time what was happening, as opposed to like kind of coming up with theories of why he did it. And he was really accommodating to that. He was really open about the whole thing. I'm going to come back and really add all of these highlights to skin to just add the right level of contrast and make this part of his face pop out. And he's pointing at certain areas where he's like, oh, I didn't really do too much to this guy's face because I didn't really want to be heavy-handed because he's at the bottom right-hand corner and he's not necessarily the main guy, but maybe I should go back in there and touch that up a little bit. And all of these things that he was going through back and forth in his head as he's working on what, like on one section, he's already kind of projecting to these other sections, you know? And it looked gorgeous. The stupid thing looked so goddamn good.
It did.
You know? Pardon my French. Like, and he was nowhere near being done, he says. You know, he was like, you know, he ended up working on it. By the end of the show, I think it was the last time I saw him was Sunday before he had to take off super early for that long drive home. He said, as he was working on it again Sunday morning when he sat down, he was like, I'm still about 5 hours away uninterrupted from finish this thing. I was like, geez, 5 hours. I'm like, I would have been done by now, you know?
Yeah.
And I was telling him about my experiences with painting and how, like, you know, and I think he confirmed it in a way, because I was like, there are times when I'm just looking at some of the stuff that I do and I don't trust the process enough. Like, it's right at that middle ugly stage where if I don't go through the entire exercise, it just looks ugly. It's just no, like, I'm in recovery mode at that point because I didn't trust the process of like taking, you know, if it's 10 steps, I only got as far as like the ugly 4th or 5th step, and not really trusting that the last 5 steps is what's going to help the whole thing come together and congeal, you know? Yeah. And he confirmed that. He was like, there's plenty of times, more than a handful of times, when he's gotten to a point in the painting where it's just like, I know with the next few steps, because I've done this more, you know, this is kind of old hat for him. He goes, I know that the next few steps there's no recovering, and so I just got to start over. I never even get to that space, you know, at least in a painting. Plenty of times I get there in black and white, but when it comes to like color / painted work, thank God I do a lot of things in digital, but when it comes to traditional, those 10 steps are really critical to see whether or not something works. And I don't have enough faith and experience to be able to go through that myself. But to have him say that was really super encouraging. To have him say like, oh, there's plenty of times. And then again, just going back to what I was talking about earlier when he was walking me through like, oh, I'm probably going to leave this area a little bit more desaturated and less fussy because I want this area to pop out and blah, blah, blah. Those are the kinds of things that I knew already. But to hear him talk about it, nuance to this painting that he's doing was really amazing. There are times when I wish I was just sitting there with like a GoPro that I hit when it, you know, that went live recording him as he was talking through it.
Tommy's a great resource. I'll send him like a picture of something as I'm working on it to get some feedback on where I'm going, what I'm doing, palette I'm using, all sorts of stuff. Yeah. And he's got so much knowledge in him. It's honestly one of the, like, what Inkpulp Instruction was really all about when I first conceived it was capturing that experience you just had.
Sure.
Of being able to watch an artist make something. And I know, like, in their mind, they're firing synapses like a automatic weapon. Right, so to be able to capture that in dialogue has been, for me, and like you're backing that up now, an incredible learning tool.
Yeah, for sure.
So to be able to capture that on video and have it exist for everyone to purchase and watch, I thought would be a great asset to art education.
Yeah, for sure. Now, you're keeping your lessons relatively affordable. You and I had spoken about it first night that I moved that I got into town. We're sitting around in the hotel, and you were saying, hey, I think, you know, just based on where I'm going with the school, I think there's actually a there's a strategy, there's a business strategy that you're about to employ, right?
Yeah.
I'm talking out of turn here when I say
No,
like,
because by the time this comes out, it'll be done. I mean, we're only 2 to 3 weeks away from releasing the new platform and all the new
right,
price points and the
right.
level system. So by the time this podcast comes out, we'll be well into it.
Yeah, I think it's well worth capturing. You'd recognize that by way of the audience, by way of the feedback that you've been getting, you thought, hey, actually, not only is it more ideal to make these moves, but also to the spirit of what you're talking about, have it be more accessible to a whole lot more people. So you're dropping the price point of Inkpulp instructions, right? So I think if there's any opportunity, I don't know if a better opportunity for people to jump on and come and take a shot at the classes and say, hey, let me take this for whatever length of the curriculum we'll take them through and see if they're going to get their money's worth. But some people, that's the barrier to entry for them sometimes, is just that price tag that's associated with it. And you're saying you're going to lower it significantly enough so that it should not be a barrier for them, and they're still going to get, you're still going to be able to walk away with as much information, right?
Right. I mean, I would hope, like, so for example, the single episodes will be about $15.
Yeah.
And so for $15, you'll get a 4-hour video of.
This is what you're dropping to, right? Give them a point of reference
Right.
of like
So,
what it was previously.
Previously, it was $30 for an episode, and the subscription was $50. So we're going down to $15 for the long episodes and $25 for the subscription. So it's like half.
Right. I think that's really smart. It's not even like some people might look at that and be like, might look at that negatively or pessimistically and be like, oh, you couldn't fulfill all the blah, blah, blah. But it didn't come from that space. It came from a space of like,
no, not at all.
This thing is moving really well. I'm getting a lot of positive reaction from it. But the point is, again, the barrier to entry becomes insurmountable once you start to have a particular price point. And if the spirit of this thing is to sort of like spread as much of that knowledge, that sort of like tingle that I got when I was describing what Tommy was going through as he walked me through his process, this makes it that much more approachable. And this move makes it that much more approachable. And I think that's really super smart.
That's what I'm thinking too. So
yeah,
hopefully that's the case. I think it will be.
That's great. And while I was talking to Tommy, Dan Panosian, good friend of ours, Dan Panosian, the artiste. He doesn't want me to call him just the illustrator anymore. He wants the entire. This is why, I mean, if I'm not going to go into not going to go to shows anymore, this is really one of the main. Like, it's just, I don't know. I never coordinate with Jason. By the way, if you don't know who we're talking about when we say Jason, we've mentioned his name a couple times. His name is Jason Schachter. He runs our original art sales. That is via essentialsequential.com. If you haven't been there recently, if you've never been there before, please go now. Check out the clientele, check out the sketchbooks, check out all the art that's available there. And I know for sure that Jason's going to be upgrading that site very, very soon with a lot more content in it, not outside of just original art and sketchbooks. Please stay tuned. But again, if you don't know who that is, and if you don't know Essential Sequential, it would behoove you to go and check out what's available. His clientele, not just us, but just like I think some of the most notable people in the mainstream comic book industry is represented there.
Yeah.
Go check that out, essentialsequential.com. Anyway, so I never check in with Jason as to who is coming to the shows with us. Right, I never like ahead of time predetermine, I'm going to sit next to X, Y, and Z, and that's going to be really cool. The only way I even know that you or Mateo are coming is because you and I talk offline pretty regularly. Hey, I'm going to go to this show. It'd be great if we, stay at a room together or like go to this restaurant that I know that's in that town, blah, blah, blah. That's pretty freaking awesome. But in as far as like who we're going to be sharing that island with or those rows of table with, I never check in. Now that's actually okay, right? There's not much that I need to worry about. Jason's very, very good at his job. I often walk in and there's rarely anything that I can pick out that I'm like, oh, Jason forgot to accommodate this or whatever.
Right.
Now the contrast to that, the opposite of that, is the dread that I feel anytime that I think Dan Panosian might be there. He's not purposefully mentally abusive. He's accidentally psychologically taxing. You know what I mean? Like just being,
I was gonna say that's a good word, taxing.
just being in that guy's presence. You have to be on your toes almost 200% of the time, because you just never know who you're going to get. Sometimes, I mean, they can coexist both at the same time, but sometimes he's the sort of like hey, I've got a lot of commissions, I'm just got to be head down and banging away at whatever people are asking him to do. But then there are days when his commissions are slow, and that's when he's the worst, because he just wants to engage in conversation. Because similar to you, I think what's great about you, Shawn, is because you are a social creature, but you're also keenly self-aware of how you conduct yourself, right?
Yeah.
And you know when you're sort of like, oh, I don't think, you read social cues where you're like, oh, I don't think this is the right time to be having like lengthy conversations about the meaning of life or anything, right? Like, oh, dude, you engage just enough, and as soon as you get like, oh yeah, okay, so I think he's working right now, you step away, right?
Yeah.
Dan Panosian, I think, is just like, or if he understands social cues, he doesn't care, right? Like, I have something to say.
Not at all.
I have a joke or a prank that I want to pull off, and it requires this specific moment right when you're in the middle of rendering something for me to engage with you for however long I need to. So
yeah, it was the last Heroes Con I did. I was next to Dan. That was a weekend's worth right there.
Yeah, that's a lifetime's worth, I would say,
Yeah.
But anyway, so Dan was there watching me kind of bloom over Tommy and having these conversations, and even Dan was humble enough, which is incredible to me, because rarely is Dan ever humble, but like Dan was humble enough to say, like, dude, I saw the work in progress that he was doing with that, Tommy was doing with that Magnum PI piece, and I would have stopped it right there. And I said, that's the reason why he's Tommy and you're Dan Panosian, right? You do just enough to get you over what passes for professional work.
Yeah, it's all that flim-flam.
Yeah, it's Tommy that goes to the nth to make sure the way he delivers for his customers resonates. You do just the bare minimum, Dan.
Right.
I'm joking around, obviously. I have a high level of respect for Dan. I have a high level of the craft that he puts into his work. He is his version of humble, right?
Yeah. And look, I mean, what we're doing, talking about Dan this way, is we're just acting like we do around Dan, because that's what we do, is we rib at each other all day.
To be clear, there's nothing that I'm saying in this conversation between you and me now that I don't say to Dan's face.
Exactly.
It's not as if he's unaccustomed to this, or we're talking out of turn and really diminishing him behind his back. This is really things that I would say to his face, and he's got a really good chin for these kinds of jokes. Because he sets himself up for these kinds of jokes.
Yeah, we have a lot. He can laugh at himself as much as he laughs at others.
Yeah, and he really is again, jokes aside, he's super fun to be around.
A lot.
If you're tuned in to that Dan Panosian frequency, right? So, because he opens it up to these kinds of back and forth.
Right.
I don't know if your audience has heard this story before, but one of the first times that Mateo has ever come to the United States to be finally represented by Essential Sequential, he flew out to Seattle. Now, mind you, this is sort of like the young, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed Mateo Scalera, right?
Yeah, just started working for Marvel.
Exactly. X amount of years into his mainstream professional career, X amount of years into like being sort of exposed to being a professional, and most importantly, being around guys like Dan Panosian, like Dave Johnson, like Tim Sale, just like the stuff, the works and people who Mateo followed at one point. So I don't think it was like idol worship, but it's just two steps shy of, right? Like, oh my gosh, I've arrived. These are the guys that I really love.
Right.
Like, I admire these guys' work. I have a high level of respect for them, blah, blah, blah. And so I remember, like, so Mateo, again, approaching everything with a level of fervor, and he's like, he's getting a chance to talk to Dan. So Dan is all ears. And what Dan doesn't understand is maybe Mateo, just like his radar for bullshit wasn't as high as it is right now. But Dan just started laying into him with a story. And I think, if I captured it perfectly, as Mateo told me, Dan convinced him that he used to be an MMA fighter.
Yeah. A competitive
MMA fighter, not just like some weird gym out in the middle of nowhere, or whatever. Like he actually competed. And if you know anything about Mateo, he loves MMA, right? So the fact
and Dan, you got to back it up here. Dan looks the part.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I encourage anybody who doesn't know what Dan looks like, so that he could actually pull off this lie, this outright disgusting lie for a human being to tell to another human being. Like, go look up a picture of him. D-A-N, I don't know how do you spell Panosian?
Panosian.
So like, look it up on the Google, and you'll see he looks the part. He could pull it off. A little bit of, salt and pepper in his hair, but certainly in his prime, he could have. Like, I've seen the Dan Panosian in his prime.
Dan
that
was
guy
a
definitely.
Bodybuilder, yeah.
So anyway, it is to say that he looked the part, and Mateo, like a trout, just ate that hook, line, and sinker, all the way up to the frickin' pole. And I don't know how we got on this subject matter, but he was talking to me, and then he goes,
and this is years later. Years later, was when he found out.
Yeah, he found out because here's the awful thing about Dan. Dan has told so many lies. He doesn't know when to follow up with people to say, like, just joking. He doesn't do it like by the end of the show, which would probably be. I mean, that's already way too late. But I would think, like, as you tell that lie, like, I'm a former MMA. I used to fight in the MMA professionally, and after you kind of get him going, maybe 10 minutes later, I'm just kidding. You know what I mean? Like back Eric, your way out of that. Dan doesn't do that. Dan is just like, he lets that bet lay for like a long time, to the point where he forgets all about it.
Yeah, and I feel like Mateo discovered it was a lie when he was talking to me and you years later. I feel like I remember this.
Absolutely. When he told us the lie, we both gave him the look of like, Dan Panosian told you that? And then he kind of, it was our reaction that suddenly, because at that point, years later, we had become really, really close with Matt. So there was like that courtesy and that extension of trust that he gives to us. And for us to react so allergically to what he just said, and also what's worse is that he had also gotten an opportunity to know Dan over those years. Right? Yeah. And so just us reacting that way, coupled with his knowledge of Dan, the sort of like the look on Maddie's face as you realize that there is no Santa Claus. You know what I mean? Like, just like he'd been lied to for all of these years, and he's been kept on the line for all of these years.
Yeah.
And so I just remember, him turning to us, and I can't remember the context of the conversation, but he turns to us and he goes, like, oh man, it's really cool that Dan is like, out of former MMA fighter, professional MMA fighter. He's like, he can still draw comic books, or he's still drawing comic books that entire time. And we were like, Dan Panosian told you that he was a professional MMA fighter. And he goes, yeah, he told me. And when did he tell you that? And he's like, oh, the first time that we were hanging out in Seattle. I'm like, this was years ago that he told you that. And then just, again, that sobering, oh my God, like the reality kicked in. You know what I mean? Like the heart, what I think is, first of all, the embarrassment of it all. And then coupled with like the heartbreaking concept that he had been lied to and not been told the truth for years.
Yeah.
You could see it on his face. And so I leaned back in the chair, because again, we were all in a row. And I leaned back and I'm like, Dan. And he looks, and I said, did you tell Mateo that you used to fight professionally in the MMA? And he goes, no. Like just like without missing a beat. He goes like, no, what? And so Mateo goes, no, you told it to me years ago at Emerald City. Because now Mateo's completely on the defensive. Like he's embarrassed, he's defensive, he's like disappointed, the whole bit. And he's like, no. You told me years ago at Emerald City that you did this. And goes, oh yeah, I thought you, and this is Dan's, without missing a beat. Dan's reply was, oh no, I thought you meant like today I told you that. Like he didn't even apologize for the fact that he did tell that lie. He was more like, oh no, I didn't tell it to you today. Like as if that was the excuse. And I'm like, oh yeah, no, absolutely, you didn't tell him today. You know,
Right.
he never apologized. He just had this impish look on his face because he realized, oh, he never told him the truth,
Right. Right.
and B, that he had him on that line for years.
Yeah.
And so from there on down, I don't think Mateo's ever forgiven him. You know, like I don't. So this is Dan Pano. I think that story perfectly captures Dan and
Yeah,
why
now-
I dread being at shows with him. Right?
Now, I found the weakness to Dan
Yeah.
was I was at a show. Now, do you know Paul Azaceta, the artist?
Yeah, I know Bob.
Okay, so Paul's a super quiet. Paul's awesome, super quiet, but super nice, super awesome. Love his work. But
Yeah.
Paul is a competitive fighter, and is pretty damn good. I've seen some fights of his that were put up on YouTube, and he's damn impressive. So, coming off of the lie that Dan had said, I got into a conversation with Dan and was like, you know, Dan, I think Paul Azaceta could take you easily. And Dan didn't like that at all. He's like, what? He's like,
was he serious?
He's like a
about it?
third of my size. I was like, yeah. But in the octagon, Dan, he's got the endurance, the stamina, the skills.
He's probably got the
Use
reach
your
on
weight
Dan too.
against you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, Dan, you can punch harder. Yes. And if you connect, you might have a shot, but I don't think you'll even land a punch.
Yeah.
And he doesn't like that conversation. So every now and then, all I have to say is, Dan, Paul got you. And he gets into a serious conversation like, no way. Yeah, Dan. No, I can take Paul. No, you can't take Paul. You're out of shape. You'll get winded so fast.
That's so great.
And when I was sat next to him at Heroes Con, it was all weekend. So whenever he was talking too much, I just put that on his head, and it just left him with his gears turning like, could Paul take me? And he can't handle that one.
And it is just a strike against his overall capabilities and masculinity. It's so amazing. Now, I bring this all up because in my heart, I truly love that guy. I truly love Dan Panosian. And another great benefit of being at these shows is being able to see, number one, well, what he draws at the shows is garbage. I'm sorry for anybody who's like commissioned him. That's all trash. That's all trash. You guys are overpaying. I hope he hears this someday because it's the brunt force of reality.
I'll title this the Dan Panosian episode. So.
But it is to say that whenever I flip through his portfolio, it's a freaking education. He had what
Without
I had
doubt.
seen as he did this transformative thing with his work maybe a decade ago, probably more.
Yeah.
But he's consistently building on it. And he's the great part about it, and this is across the board for all the guys that we end up hanging out with in whatever capacity at these shows when it comes to Essential Sequential. The artists there are they're aware that their work is good, but they'd never be the first person to tell you how good it is. Right?
Right.
They're just very sort of like matter-of-factly going about the business of being professional illustrators, you know?
And all of them looking to grow.
Yes, they're always looking for something, and they're humble enough to understand, based on their relationship with you, what they can learn from you. You know?
Absolutely.
So with Dan, it's always just like whenever I give him like a incredibly positive review, our relationship has become so adversarial. He always thinks the other shoe's about to drop. Like I compliment him on this thing, and he always he braces for the kick that he doesn't see coming, you know?
Right.
But it is, it is coming from at least for me, it's coming from a place of admiration. He had these two pieces. One in specific was a Conan one that was standing on a I think it was a cover for something, but he was standing on.
It was a drink and draw thing.
No, it wasn't that. It was a cover. It was him. It was Conan coming out of the shadows, and the floor was made out of bricks. And Jason told me later that it was used as a cover, and that's why the price tag was so high.
Oh, okay.
And it was gorgeous. It was gorgeous to the point where I was like, "Geez, man, I feel compelled to ask about how much that is, so that I might potentially buy it from Dan." When I saw the price tag, I knew it was worth every nickel that he was asking for it. But it wasn't enough for me to go pursue it because I suspect if I had gone to Dan and Jason, like, hey, I'm really interested.
They would have cut you a price, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't feel good about that. You know what I mean? Let him earn whatever that thing is worth because it looks, or whatever that thing is worth because it looks gorgeous. And that's not a rare thing. That's not a rare occurrence that happens, right? Like, I'll flip through Dan's portfolio. We often joke about, like, why did Jason choose these particular pieces out of the hundreds of pieces that he has of our work? Why these ones? But Jason must have some method to his madness. But we do it tongue-in-cheekly. But through those pages, I flip through. I'm like, jeez, man, that looks so good. That looks so great. That looks, and there's only one piece in that portfolio that I told him never, ever, ever leave it open on this page. Because this is the most amateurish shit that you've ever done, and you did this well into your career. You know,
what piece was that?
I can't remember. He was inking inking over somebody, and it was just awful.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so talking to Dan, you can't talk process with Dan because he turns everything into a joke or a lie or both, right? So you can't talk to Dan. So the position that I often take is just being able to look over his shoulder and watch him ink, and so that I'm not completely out of character or off brand. I joke how awful it is, but really me looking over his shoulder is a huge, huge education to just being able to be like, that's when Dan doing his flim flam when he's just rendering detail for the sake of rendering detail, and it's all a lot of BS. But when he gets his structure down, when he gets his form and his volume down, and most importantly, when he gets his poses down, I'm like, geez, man, that's really, really good.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Those are the two guys that we had an opportunity to sit next to.
Yeah.
This show, right at the far end of the table, were some of the best people that I've had an opportunity to be around. But obviously, their work speaks for themselves. Mark Irwin was at the far end.
Yeah.
And so was Tim Townsend. We had the opportunity to sit with a brand new member to Essential Sequential. Her name was
Micah.
Right?
Yeah, Micah.
She's getting a lot of heat online right now for these Catwoman covers. But at the far end, to Mark Irwin's left was, on occasion, was Andy Kubert, and that in and of itself, or Adam, excuse me, and that in and of itself is just the most humbling sort of experience to sit next in the same vicinity as that guy, having a repertoire, having this sort of like lineage and body of work that guy has behind him. So it is to say, in the longest way possible, that if there's anything that I'm going to miss once I stop doing these shows, it's going to have those opportunities to just kind of fly on the wall and sort of peek over somebody's shoulder as they're working on something and kind of pick their brain and use their knowledge to incorporate into my own.
I'm thinking you'll end up going to shows just for a day, like flying in one night, spending the day, and leaving the next night, just to get a day of that.
Yeah,
I could see you doing that.
That I won't get sick of, but just if there's anything that I was reflecting on the flight home from Orlando, I was like, man, I'm gonna miss those opportunities, because those aren't scheduled. You know what I mean? Those are just kind of like ad hoc. We're just kind of standing around.
Yeah, and I look forward to those a lot myself.
Yeah,
for sure.
Right. Well, man, that's 56 minutes as opposed to 45. You've got an appointment to keep, so
I do.
Let's cut it there, and then we'll pick one up later on.
All right, sounds good.
All right, buddy.
Thanks, Eric.
This is the Inkpulp podcast. This is the Inkpulp podcast. Comics, hip hop, life.
Yo, the price of games, rise up, stand the price, the loss of legs. My occupation, in essence, not complacent. Block the banquet, stop the computation.